Looks like we're right at the 9 o'clock hour, Giancarlo. Let's go ahead and get started. I still see people joining in. Hopefully it's not so distracting. One of the things that, as I was mentioning, right, Giancarlo and I wanted to, and really we wanted to get the whole Domotz team together to understand what's on your mind. We do a lot of webinars. We do it in a go-to-webinar type fashion where it's myself, it's Giancarlo, it's some of our technical team, right? We're talking about features, functions, right? New things, new concepts. Hopefully a lot of you have seen the different 101 and 201s. That's been a unique experience. It's unique every time, as a matter of fact, just depending on what's going on or what we have to show. But in those sessions, we don't really get as much feedback as we would like, because the way in which that we have developed this product, it's really by listening to you guys. Of course, our founders came out with some really good ideas, and Giancarlo was employee number one, and he really helped develop to where we are today. But as we have grown, as we've continued to add features, of course, we're out talking at trade events, we're out listening to emails, we're listening on the support forums. But we wanted to give you guys a way in which you could communicate directly to us and say what's on your mind, okay? With that being said, let me go over the agenda and then go over a couple of ground rules here. From an agenda perspective, we'll talk about kind of how I expect this to work here. After that, right, we will go into kind of a review of what we did in 2022. I want Giancarlo to touch on some of the great things that we did, both from a user interface as well as infrastructure point of view. A lot of the changes we worked on this last year have been on the infrastructure side, which may not be completely visible to you, but it has a strong strategic direction about what we're doing going forward, and I want to touch on that. And then my hope is that Giancarlo, myself, we can talk a little bit about what we're doing in the near term, right? Where we're going, why we're going, and the direction that we're going to. And I hope that that sparks some ideas for you guys to where we can spend the bulk of the time, right? 2/3 of this time that we have allotted for some Q&A. So that being said, a couple of ground rules, right? This is a Zoom meeting. You guys will be able to be live, okay? I've chosen to keep the chat windows open, right, to where everybody can chat. So with that, with also audio, right, you guys have been on Zoom calls the last 2-3 years. So just be respectful, right, of what's going on there. As it says, try to refrain from any disruptive behavior. I would ask that you stay muted until you're ready to speak. Probably during this first part of the presentation, when Giancarlo starts in there, we may just make it so that people cannot unmute for that first part, just to help be less disruptive. But then I want to ask, using some of the raise hands or use chat features, right? Use those to get some points across if you wanted to say anything. And I'll do my best to moderate this. Like I said, this could end up in a train wreck, and if so, so be it. We learn, we'll figure it out. But I hope it all works really well. So that being said, let's get off of this presentation sharing here. Let me stop that. Let's go back to video, and Giancarlo, right? Let me essentially turn it over to you, right? So we can touch on some of what we've done in 2022, kind of a year in review, just to give an idea to everybody about what are some of the cool things we've done.
Very good, GP. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks everybody for joining. As GP has mentioned, this is the first time for us on this town hall. So everybody, as GP mentioned, we want to listen to you rather than just continue to let you know what's going on in Domotz. Now we want to listen your question, we want to listen your suggestion, and make it as an actionable item. In the same way we have done in the past through other means, like receiving requests through our support, receiving suggestions to our chat functionality, or in the one-to-one discussion with our onboarding team members here. Anyway, 2022 has been very nice year for us. A lot of new feature has been brought on board. GP as we want to start up this town hall. As usual, we keep a very high pace of new functionality release every month. I invite everybody to follow me in just exploring what has been added in Domotz through the means of our release notes. As you can see in our help, so it's the user guide on help.domotz.com. I will probably share this one easier. We have every single month, almost every single month with a good pace, we have a new release notes with few functionality added every single month. We also send a newsletter every month with some of this functionality as a recap, what we judge being the most, let's say, the most relevant functionality, which might be important for everybody in our use base. So starting from the beginning of the year, a few of the things that have been added into Domotz is recap in the subject of the release notes from January 19, 2022. We have added the capability of scanning large network. What a large network is, from our point of view, and for the methodology we use for scanning and monitoring the network, is a network which is bigger than a /22 in the network mask kind of speed. So for everybody that is aware of how Domotz works, you can have one single Domotz agent which scans one, two, or multiple VLANs or network interfaces, all with one single Domotz agent. But the standard Domotz agent has a limitation on the network mask that on every single network, on every single subnet that can scan is /22, which is roughly 1024 different IP addresses for every single subnet. So with one single Domotz agent on standard plan, you can have thousands of devices discovered. But we recognize that you might have inherited a network with a /16, so it's a class B network, and you want to use Domotz for scanning that entire network. The methodology used by Domotz for scanning that network is a little bit different from the standard agent, but we now have this capability. It's usually included in what we call the enterprise plan. It's just because there is a different behavior of the agent in scanning that kind of big networks. And even in that case, you can have an agent scanning one or more class B subnet. Same in January, we add the capability to what we call OS monitoring, kind of big feature to ask every single endpoint, Windows, MacBook, Linux device, for some information about the system, including the applications, the list of applications installed. Now, the application installed is retrieved in Domotz. It's not available yet in the UI, but is available through the means of public API. So you can have a public API to retrieve the list of applications installed on every single endpoint. At the beginning of the year, we start also, let's say, a roadmap to improve our what we call inventory dashboard. We'll talk about inventory dashboard a little bit later. Between February and March, we released a few integrations. One of them was like the integration with Halo PSA with regards to the ticketing system. Don't forget, Halo PSA has its own integration with Domotz, which allows you guys to bring assets out of Domotz and bring it to the Halo PSA platform. We also did an integration with Synchro. We call like Synchro integration 2.0, just because with Synchro we did already have an integration with the ticketing system, so we are able to open and close ticket. At that point, we were not able to update the assets. So we extended an integration which we had originally with IT Glue to support Synchro, as well as a system where we want to push the real-time data that we collect with Domotz. Again, some advanced restructure of the session management, which ended up in the inventory tab. Support for other systems with regards to the OS monitoring capability, like the iDRAC, and then in April also IO support. In April, we did start a new journey, and we'll talk about this journey a little bit more later today. A new journey to further simplify the way you guys can monitor devices through the means of SNMP. We originally, like 5 years ago, when we start supporting SNP, we allow users to create sensor, what we call custom sensor on specific OED. So you need to know basically the address of the object that you want to monitor every single device. Specifically, I mean, the exact address. A few years back, we have implemented a mechanism so that we have a database of MIPS. MIPS is basically the dictionary for this OED, so for these object identifiers. So that when we discover a device, we try to identify which MIPS they support. If we have that MIP in the database, we already propose to you guys which custom OED you want to monitor. By the searching, like for example, for temperature, we will only search among all the OEDs that have temperature in the description or in the name. This step further is a way to allow you guys to be proposed with a pre-configured template of multiple SNMP objects. So once we discover like a Synology NAS or a CyberPower UPS or a switch, and we'll talk about the switch, we start identifying which MIPS they have, and if they have a combination of MIPS, we know that we can extract, for instance, from a printer, the ink level of every single ink, and also the name, which is on a different OED, and we put the things together. Actually, the ink level is a peculiar one because the ink level is actually three different OEDs: the name of the cartridge, the total amount of level of ink, and the current user. What we display is black is 30%, which simplifies a lot of the view there. We have still some limitation. We are still improving. We'll discuss about that a little bit more.
And Giancarlo, I would point out, right, in my mind, some of the pre-configured templates for SNMP that the team has developed over the last year has been it simplifies, it puts the S in SNMP, right? The simple network management protocol. And I think that that's been a real big benefit. And I know that between our sales team and some discussions we've had with different customers, you know, what we're really trying to do is figure out how we can improve those templates and add more templates to make it even broader and easier.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I will tell you more there. Okay, those I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah, we'll discuss about future later. Sorry. But yeah, no, but you're right. I mean, we will add more and more template. That's our job. I mean, we want to make your life easier. We want to allow you to monitor your device in an easier way. But we want to do even more.
Then about some of the monitoring dashboards, Giancarlo, right? Because we have, you know, I want to be sensitive to our time, right? We've got about 5 to 10 minutes left that we can talk about past, but I know people are interested in the future as well. So
yes. So in terms of what we have, let's jump into the app and let's discuss a little bit about the 3 areas that we have touched a lot, apart from all the integration, which is very important as well, but all the UI that we have touched. It's basically these 3 top areas, like the site explorer, the inventory, the monitoring dashboard. We have done our own mistakes. We recognize our own mistake. We did steps back on our mistake. We adjusted the target. So we were, at the beginning of the year, we were putting a lot of effort in building this inventory dashboard area. So in the inventory dashboard, this is where you can organize your own customer in organization. And then for every single organization, you have your own sites or the Domotz agent. So for every single organization, you have multiple sites. And then for every single site, of course, you have multiple devices. Why this inventory dashboard is so important is because it allows you to scale across all of your customers, all the network of your customer, all the devices of your customers, so that if you want to search for all the Cisco devices that are sitting on among all the network of all your customers, you can search them from one single point of
view. And Giancarlo, one thing I want to point out, right, in full transparency to all of our listeners, you, myself, right, our users, a lot of people that have been with us for a while, they looked at this inventory dashboard as being an extremely powerful tool, right? Because it puts so much data that you know is in the database and in the back end at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Here's what was interesting, right? And Giancarlo, you remember this with me, right? When we started to say we were going to eliminate what is now called the Sites Explorer and just go to this page, we had a ton of backlash from that.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah,
People
I remember.
did not want to lose that page, right? And part of the reason that Sites Explorer, the reason we chose to keep it is because we were listening to you guys. But ultimately, for me, right, I looked back at what is the Domotz vision, what is our mission statements, what are we trying to do going forward? And a critical part of those is ease of use, right? And admittedly, when you look at this inventory dashboard, there's so much data that some people can see it as complex. And
it's overwhelming. Yeah, it's definitely overwhelming.
It can be. So we took a step back. We kept the Sites Explorer page for that ease of use, but while still pushing forward on these inventory pages, and we're continuing to build on it. But that also,
absolutely,
Giancarlo, that also speaks to some of the changes. I think you got to touch on this, right? Some of the changes that the team has made on the back end infrastructure to help with scalability and speed on these pages, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, GP. And this is very important. No, we basically brought on board on our stack of technology a new piece of big technology, which allows us to scale much faster on big numbers. We started having few customers, without naming them, but a few customers with thousands of agents. So thousands of networks to monitor, which means millions of devices to be monitored, all with one single account. Loading that big Site Explorer in the way it was before, it was kind of a pain. No, just to be fine. Now, thanks to all the work, the background work that we have done to make the inventory dashboard workable, no? You had possibility. In this case, I'm just loading 2,000 devices, which is nothing. I mean, I have a few accounts. The one of our support team used to have like 1 million devices loaded, just because, I mean, our customers are sharing access to their agents, which I'm thinking about 1,200 agents. So the inventory dashboard need to be scalable in that way. We use the same technology now to make the Site Explorer much faster. And this is something very new. We probably released last month. Sorry if I go back to the release notes, but yeah, if you look at the release notes from November, and there is a video where it shows how much faster, this is the better performance. So how much faster are the performance in loading one account with like 3,000 agents or something. You will see the video, it's a huge difference. But now going back to the UI, so that new background piece of infrastructure also allowed us to build something very new for us, which is what we call the monitoring dashboard. So the concept is similar to the inventory. We want to make sure that you have visibility on what you care. The inventory on one side has access, visibility to all the data that is in Domotz for your account. The difference with monitoring dashboard is like your custom area. So it's where you can start building your own list of tables to access to the devices, to access to the sensor among the devices, to access to them across all the agents. And that has been a very nice area of investment, no, GB?
Yeah, absolutely. Giancarlo, just in the last little bit, talk quickly about some of the integrations that we've done, and then let's focus a little bit on roadmap direction. And then we're starting to get a few questions coming in, which are great. I just want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for those.
Absolutely. So in terms of integration, one area of investment during this year is, of course, we have done a lot of our what we call direct integration or Domotz native integration, with ticketing system, with asset management platform, with devices like switches, platform like Ubiquiti, Unify platform, Meraki, and so on. But we have also invested a lot of our resources in continuing the development on the custom integration area, in the framework that allows every single user to write their own software, which is basically a simple script. I will show you the SSL certificate, how short it is. Yeah, it's just.
I like how you say simple, right? Maybe simple for your software guys, but for us hardware guys, we're like, whoa.
Oh yeah. And this is where it comes a nice thing, GP. I recognize that it might not be easy for you, so we have to part of our resources, and we have focused those resources, in write simple script to interact with the devices discovered by Domotz, or even with the cloud services that you can have in Domotz. So in one area, we were improving the framework to allow you to better develop your own scripts on your own custom devices, on your own information that you want to extract in your own way. On the other side, we are also writing some of the code for you. And this is particularly interesting because this allows us to release in the last couple of months a lot of new integration. If I look at this application Cloud Monitor, this is all new. This all came in the last 2 or 3 months. So we can now interface with Docker, we can now interface with pfSense, we can go and get data out of Redis, we can go and get the SSL certificate out of the website. We can grab whatever we want, understand if on a specific web page there is what I'm interested in, and so on. But this is just to speak about application. We are doing the same thing for some of the physical device and the hardware that we're speaking about. So we are making sure that we provide you with this information.
Yes, I mean, strategically speaking, Giancarlo, one of the challenges that you and the team and I have found is that as the let's call it the world of network monitoring is becoming more and more prevalent, right? People are asking for more and more integrations. There's more and more hardware. There's more and more IoT devices getting developed and being put on networks, whether they're on the Pro AV and commercial side or whether they're truly on the managed service provider side and they just need to monitor those. I think that this custom integration architecture that you and the team have really built out is what's going to help with that scalability. And to your point, it's not that we're just throwing this over the wall and say, hey, if you need this, go do it yourself, right? I want to point out that if there are, solutions, I'm going to call it solutions as a whole, right, that you need where this custom integrations driver can be implemented or we can help get it started for you, we're all for that. So please feel free to email our support team, right, with those requests, and we'll get back to you because I suspect if you need it, there's probably a whole bunch of other people out there that need it as well. So,
yeah, I completely get you, and I'm all for it. Helping our user base to build this kind of custom integration.
I mean, we're trying to build a community, right, with respect to GitHub, and where we have all of these integration drivers that you can just pull from the community. So yeah,
that's true, JP. And this kind of goes in the direction of spoiling what's next, somehow. So we are building this kind of library. We are building this library of all the what we call pre-configured custom integration that you can use. And the idea in our mind is that when you go to this custom integration, these are the ones that I've loaded in my account. There will be an area in the bottom where you will be able to choose whatever we have published on GitHub, or eventually whatever other users have published, and make it public to everybody on GitHub or other repository for code sharing. So yeah, absolutely, that's kind of an area of interesting for us, GB.
Yeah. Giancarlo, speak to the near-term future, right? I mean, some of the things that I know that the team, I mean, some people start to see changes even within the next 2 weeks, call it a Christmas gift, if you will. But in Q1, we're addressing a couple, I think, interesting things that will help. Why don't you speak to that a little bit, and then we'll get to some of the questions that we have.
Absolutely. So at a certain point today, I was telling you, during the year we have invested a lot also in the adding some simplification to the SNMP, to the S of this SNMP, we have done this pre-configured SNMP template. Very nice, very powerful. There is a limitation there. You are able to monitor the ink level of a printer. At the moment, as of today, you're not able to set an alert on those kind of metrics. So you cannot get an email or a ticket on your ticketing system about the ink level low or huge traffic or error on the switch port 3 of whatever switch we want to look. We are working in that sense, and as a matter of fact, in 2 weeks, probably next week, but I want to be, no, let's say in 2 weeks, we will have the capability of setting alerts on these SNMP pre-configured sensors GP. That's very, very interesting.
That is a good thing. So, yes.
Yeah, and you know, it's completely new area for us, completely new way of setting alerts to the sensors. And I will touch a little bit more on the alerts part as well, but still speaking about the SNMP sensors, I want to anticipate something that we are working on. We have built this pre-configured SNMP template for NAS drive, UPS, switches, volumes on a Linux machine, whatever, on the printers and so on. We will build more and more, but more important, in the same way we have allowed every single user to interface with their own device, because they know their device, they know how to interact through the custom integration. We will allow the user to create their own SNMP, which will also make the community of Domotz user even more powerful, because the more users can bring this kind of template on board and they allow us to share, the more the other users can benefit from that kind of work. And we will do that. We will do that. We have, again, another team, which thanks to this framework we are building to allow you to create template, they will create the template and we will make it public.
So, you know, look, I don't mind saying this, right? We're taking lessons from a couple of major players out there, right? Watching this. I mean, Giancarlo, when I think of folks like Logic Monitor, PRTG, right? Things that are very sensor-centric, right? Systems that are sensor-centric, easy for me to say. I think that the way they have built templates, the way they have built a community around that, I think we see that as being very useful, right? And very helpful to everyone out there. I think, of course, Giancarlo, you gotta then ask the question of, once you have templates out there, once you have this community, are there ways in which we can automatically apply those things to an agent, right? When an agent's being deployed, can we have a system that when it discovers devices X, Y, and Z, that those things are automatically applied?
Yeah, that's exactly our vision, no? Because you say something very, very important. We want to make the network monitoring solution as simple as possible. It's not a simple subject. We want to make at least the experience as simple as possible. So yes, that's in our vision and in our roadmap. But another area that I touched for the SNMP sensor, but it also applies to all the way we manage the notification channel. In 2023, we will also spend a lot probably of resources in thinking an easier way to manage alerting in Domotz globally, not only for the sensors, but also for the status of devices, connectivity with the internet, bandwidth, and so on. So we will spend a lot of resources there. We'll make sure that all the alerts that you can receive on your ticketing system or on your Slack or team channel or wherever you want to consume the notification, this notification will be available also in Domotz. So there will be a history of events that occurred in Domotz across all of your agents. So you remember the inventory dashboard that I was showing you has few tabs, which is starts from organization, sites, network, devices. There will be sensors, of course, there, which makes a lot of sense. But we want to make sure that across all of your sites, across all of your organization that you need to monitor, you have a simple way of reviewing what happened in terms of notification. At the moment, you don't have the capability in Domotz, and you need to look outside of Domotz, like in your ticketing system or in your mail and so on.
Giancarlo, we're getting some good questions in here. I want to summarize, right, the near-term roadmap as saying two things. One is you spoke to the alerting side of it. Okay, I will say there's a lot going on the back end side. Again, speaking to the team's infrastructure work to make sure that what looked like little changes that are being made, right? The ability to add alerts to pretty much any sensor, right? That's in there, even custom variables from the integration driver, right? Getting that into the platform, it's going to look like small changes, right? Incremental small changes, but a lot of that has to do with just the infrastructure that we are building out. So, Giancarlo, do you mind? Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on from a roadmap or strategic perspective that we should address before I get to questions?
Yes, a couple of things, GP. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, of course, something might change. Some priority, especially if we look at longer term plan, some priority might get in, or some other things might get in. But there are a couple of areas where we definitely, 4 areas I want to touch actually, where we definitely are already investing in, at least in research, and we will invest more in development. So the first area is the monitoring dashboard. Is as is today, is a place where you put your own tables. A lot of values, you can display graphs starting from those values. But at the moment, you cannot put the graph as a component, as a widget of the monitoring dashboard. We want to do that. We want to allow you to have a live graph of like CPU usage on the most important server that you have, or like expiration date of SSL certificate, whatever. We want to make sure that you have graphs as widget, as well as pie charts as widget. So we want to make sure that you have that capability. And once you create that kind of dashboard, we'll make sure that you are allowed to share with your customer, which touches another key point of our investment for next year, yes, which is capability of defining user by roles.
User types.
So, yeah, user type.
Yeah.
Exactly, JP. So,
yeah. Carlo, I didn't know if you wanted to bring this up, but to me, as somebody who interfaces with quite a few of our customers, talking to them about the needs, again, I'm probably not saying anything that people aren't already thinking, but the fact that we really have 3 user types, right? Team master, team member, and a field operator is just not enough, right? We need to be able to replicate kind of the team masters as needed. We also need to have read-only users. I noticed actually one of our users here talks a lot about co-managed services as well, right? And we really need like a co-managed user so that you can partner with your clients, right, or your customers, and then be able to allow them to do read-only, maybe set alerts, but not necessarily add agents, right? So, man, a lot of the larger MSPs request for a billing user type, right? Somebody that can manage the credit card. So I'm glad to hear you say that. It's on our roadmap. I think 2023, we're going to get that thing going. So,
yeah, absolutely. And then the last 2 items that I saw some question. I didn't read all the question, unfortunately. I hope you saw some of the question, and we will bring those questions.
Yep, I do.
So I saw one of the question about a way to monitor traffic like NetFlow or JFlow, analyzing the NetFlow and JFlow traffic. So this is an area of investment. As a matter of fact, we have between an alpha and beta version of our solution. So if you are interested in that area, feel free to contact our support. We can enroll you in this beta program. So you will be able to taste how the NetFlow analysis will work in Domotz. As I said, it's very early stage for us. That's why.
No, it's been a topic of conversation though, right? I mean, you think of Domotz, right? Domotz is a network monitoring tool, but we also have management capabilities. We talk a lot about network diagnostics, and of course, there's more to diagnostics than ISP speed tests and latency tests, right? So the fact that the team has done a lot of development against some of the NetFlow, JFlow, SFlow, all those flows, right, and determine like some of what will be the best solutions, I think is really cool. And what I've seen, I'm pretty excited about too. So,
That's
Giancarlo, let me get to a couple of questions. You've actually touched on a few. We had some come in as well beforehand, but let me address some of the simple ones. And I see two here that I kind of put together. The first one was about editing tags rather than just important. And you and I have talked a little bit about this, right? Domotz has this notion of favorites. Domotz has this notion of important versus not important. From your perspective, what capabilities or what do you think? How do we address this type of a question, right? Let me ask that.
And this is I mean, I don't know who was the user. I don't know if we want to give the words to the user, but yeah, this is in our mind as well. As a matter of fact, you see like important is the only tag, but actually this is a future-proof kind of inventory tab where we want to make sure that you are allowed to add as more tags as you want. It's not there yet, but it's, I mean, it's
and I would point out two things, right? A couple lessons learned from watching some of our other solutions, even looking at things like syslog, right? Which is another question that's kind of coming up here. But being able to have different levels of errors, right? Warning versus debug versus critical, right? I think the same thing can be applied to devices. And what's even more interesting about this, which again, I give kudos to the team for considering the scalability here, but being able to think of how different users in different markets think about how they want to classify devices, right? It's not just important and not important, right? Sometimes it may be, I don't even know what it is, but they're going to come up with custom levels that they want to classify. So giving them, device A, device B, or whatever, I think is valuable, and the team is looking at them. So that's good. That's good. I will say today, if you want to consider how you can start to sort by other devices, right, or device types, consider how you name it, consider how you use zone, consider how you use location, right? Some of those property fields that are associated with each device as well. Another question that we got, which I think it kind of leans towards the monitoring dashboards, is also leaning towards the direction that we're going. The question was around improving the monitoring dashboard to make it look a little more, the term that was used was knockish, right? The team has developed a whole bunch of tables to date, right? So you can bring up sensor tables, you can bring up device tables, you can customize the columns. But I think what this question is really getting to is, when can I bring in more widgets, right? That would be pie charts, bar charts, line graphs, and associate critical data to that. What's your thoughts on that, Giancarlo? Because
that's something that I touched. One of the area of improvement is definitely the monitoring dashboards, which today is one monitoring dashboard, multiple monitoring tables. And what we want to bring there is exactly other kind of widgets like the graphs or pie chart and so on, like a blogger for all the events that you want to put in the monitoring dashboard. So yeah, that's an area of investment there.
Yeah, it's an important one in my mind. And to me, that gets back to that ease of use, right? How can we take all this extremely complex data that's out there, but make it a little bit easier to use? And again, right, I look at some of our competition that's out there, right, especially in the enterprise space. They've done a very, very good job with dashboards, and we're taking those lessons learned and starting to implement those. I know that I've seen some prototypes, if you will, of the way in which we can take our data today and build in nice graphs. So I think you'll see that change coming forward. One question that we got that I want to give a shout out to our marketing team for. The question came down to, as Josh, I believe, that asked about this, right? But how can we, get more training on how to use all these features? And Giancarlo, you and I have been with this company for years. You and I have been the ones doing the trainings. And what we have found is that when we first started out, 5 years ago doing these things, it was a simple 1 hour training. And then we had to split it into 2. And now we're talking about 3 or 4. And frankly, you and I don't have time for that. So the marketing team is building out a Domotz Academy right now. In fact, the team has done a really good job of taking the 101 and the 201 and I would say compartmentalizing it into the things that you need to focus on, but then they are expanding it. There's a whole bunch of short videos that can be put together that will give you topics that you care about. So for instance, if you want to focus on the network topology mapping, right? How to set it up, how to make sure it's working properly, how to export the data to either a PNG or even an Excel file that you can then modify in Visio, right? They are building out those trainings. So I think you're going to see that come to fruition starting in Q1 with some basic stuff, but then they're going to continue to build on top of that. So I appreciate the question. I want you to know that our team is working on that. And I'm always interested in as well in how we can leverage some of the more industry-wide trainings that are out there. As you guys probably know, right, Domotz is a part of CompTIA. We're part of ASCII. We're a part of even like commercial AV groups like NSCA, where they do trainings, even looking at AVIXA, right? And how we at Domotz can be a broader part of those things. And a lot of this work that we're doing on the Academy is helping us take us into that space. So I really like that question there. Giancarlo, on another side, and this is important because it comes along with the alerts, I think, but there was a question about online or offline status and devices, right? But kind of getting a log of that and a history. And I know that under each device, under each agent, right, you can go and see what the status and when it changed. But I think what they're really looking for here is an aggregated list of status changes, almost like a syslog type of environment, right? But that also brings us into syslog and another question that came up about SIM, right? So talk to me about your thoughts on where the alerts and what we're doing with alerts are going to, how that's going to transform into history.
Yeah. So yeah, I partially touched this one when we were talking about the evolution of the alerts and the evolution of how we deliver notification externally. But we want to externally, like in ticketing system, in email, in chat channel like Slack or Team, but also internally into the tool. So we want to make sure that you have a place where you will have all the history of events that you care, sorted by importance of the event in one single place. So we call it like a blotter of all the information that, all the events that happen in Domotz in one single place, cross agents. So cross agents, cross device, cross organization. In the view of the inventory, we said we have organization, we have then down below the sites, down below the devices, we will have sensors, and then a list of all the events that happen across all of this information that we collect.
Yep. Yeah. Good.
So, and you mentioned something like about the syslog as well. So we will also work on that area. So the same way we have started working on the analysis of S-flow traffic and the net flow traffic, we will also be able to receive syslog from syslog enabled devices. So, syslog is a way of pushing like logs from device to a centralized management system, which will be Domotz for in this case. We'll pass the messages and we'll bring into the cloud the relevant message for you, and eventually create a ticket on your ticketing system or send them a push notification wherever you want. Yeah. That's an area of investment. And very similar to this concept is the concept of SNMP trap. So for whoever is familiar with the SNMP, what Domotz basically does today is SNMP get, is pulling data out of the SNMP server that runs on every single device and gets the data through means of SNMP get, SNMP work. But the SNMP server is also able to send what they call trap to the SNMP collector, which is in this case is the Domotz agent. We want to make sure that we will have this capability in receiving the traps from the devices. It's not there yet, so it will be something for the future.
Yeah, I think SNMP traps will be a good evolution for us, right? I mean, the fact that we can monitor SNMP really means that we're polling devices, right? You're polling at the rate that you set it up, whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes. But the beauty of a trap is that it's more of a, call it a push notification, right? Or a push into the system so that when an event occurs, you can immediately alert on that and log it. So I think that's important that we do that. It's a good question. Giancarlo, there were two questions that came in, very, very different questions, but I think it's important that we address this. One, lots of ways we can talk about this, but it says, can we make the license of Fing more wide, right? Was the basis of the question, right? So let me
give it for free.
Yeah, yeah, we can give it for free because we no longer have Fing. Yeah. So Fing is a technology that Domotz acquired several years ago. Domotz is the one that brought out this little blue box, right? It was kind of like the Domotz agent, but it was essentially a Fing-based agent, and it allowed you to utilize the Fing app. Domotz acquired that technology because of the way in which Fing had such a massive database, as well as algorithms for discovering, classifying devices, right? When we talk about make, model, and type, which for me, as part of one of Domotz's core competencies, is really around asset management, right? Being able to discover not just the PCs and laptops that are out there, but every single IoT device that shows up on your network, whether it's, you know, your Apple Watch, your phones, your smart systems, your voice control systems, whatever they are. Now we have, I'm going to say, taken that technology and we have built upon it. We've improved it quite a bit. I think it was last year. We ended
3 years
up
ago, GP.
3? Are you kidding?
Yeah, time flies. Yeah, it was.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was 2019. It was the end of 2019.
Holy
pre-pandemic.
So
yeah, holy moly. Yeah, time flies.
We ended up selling off that technology. We still have licensing rights for that technology for the Fing, but one of our, let's call it friends, ended up taking that technology and they're now building on that. So when it comes to Fing itself, there's not much we can do, but I want to spin into how we can help with this question, right? Ultimately, what they're looking for is how can I take advantage of some of the discovery of this from a hobbyist point of view. Domotz, right, has these public APIs that are out there, which effectively gives you all of the classifications and information, right? Anytime a new device shows up, we're going to take that MAC address, we're going to convert it to make, model, and type as best as possible, leveraging those Fing technologies. So as long as you have a Domotz agent in there, you have access to all that data. I don't know if you want to say anything else about that, Giancarlo, other than to say, you know, if you're still very interested in Fing, go to Fing.
No, absolutely. No, you said something right, GP. We still leverage the Fing technology to identify devices in the proper way, you know, starting from the raw data that we can collect on the network, like through various protocols. No, ICMP is one of them, ARP is another, Bonjour, NetBIOS, domain name, and so on. We collect all this amount of data, and somehow we get the identification out of Fing on specific device type and model and so on, which is very, very unique in our market, GP, and it's super powerful. Yeah. Even if you compare with big names of network monitoring solution, Domotz is the only one that allows you to identify in a proper way device as soon as they are discovered in the network.
Yeah, yep. Giancarlo, we got another question around, and I think this is an important one, but it was around the network topology map that I want to address.
Yep.
And I know we've seen this question on support, right? The way in which we create our network topology map, we're using a lot of RFC protocols. And then of course, we're using some intelligence on our cloud to understand what I'm going to call parent-child relationships of devices that are out there. When you get to something like an unmanaged switch, right, you can come in there and then say, hey, this is a parent to these children, right, which then helps that topology draw a little bit cleaner. Last year, actually, you're probably going to tell me it was like 2 or 3 years ago, but we ended up starting to implement LLDP, right? Link layer discovery protocol, to help improve that. But I still think there's ways to go. Now, this question in particular, right? They have a large network and they're pointing out that trying to find devices can be a little bit complicated. I know that we're looking at how we can, today we've got two buttons. Well, we got lots of buttons, but one button is, expand the whole thing or collapse the whole network topology. And even if I mean, people that have seen our IoT lab, right, know that there's hundreds of devices on there and it can be kind of a mess, right? Is there any thoughts on how we can improve that? Or is the team looking at how we can make this a little bit more usable?
Absolutely, absolutely, JB. So there is a search area in the topology, but even in the search area, just highlight the device. And if they highlight it, if the device is hidden behind other leaf, that are all collapsed, it's kind of hard. So we want to make sure that in the future, when you search for a device, it zoom into the device and zoom in the area of the device. In particular, the user was also asking a way to have like a mini topology inside the device itself. So if I start from the device, I can do the topology. Somehow we have that information. Somehow in the device itself, you have the information which is the parent component it's connected to. Most likely a switch or an access point in that case. Yep. But yes, more important, there are other areas of investment in the topology. We want to make sure that it's more colorful, more clearer for your customers, because many times you need a topology also to share with your customer and make them aware of how the network is connected in their case, in their site. We want to make sure that this is clearer, nicer, appealing, but also useful. So we have some information, and I saw another question I want to touch a little bit. We have the information on which devices to discover on which part of the network, on which VLAN or which subnet. We want to make sure that in topology, we bring this information as well in the alerting part. So when you receive an alert, you will be notified, device ABC on VLAN 3 is down, and you know exactly that it's touching on VLAN 3. So this is something that we want to add. I don't know exactly when, but this is exactly something that me as a network engineer, I would like to see that.
Yeah. I've been pushing for that for a while now, right? When we see, for instance, right, if people are daisy chaining or let's call it trunking, right, switches, right, knowing which VLANs, right, are coming across that, I think can be visually represented. If anybody's looked at like the Ubiquity Unify maps, right, the topology maps that they build and the information that they have at each link, it's pretty nice, right? It's pretty nice. And I think we should strive to do things similar visually, right? So that way you don't have to click on links and dive down in layers to see that. So Giancarlo, we got several comments that I've seen in the chat, which and people were kind of, let's say, bandwagoning on it. And I tend to agree with this, but I also want to put a counterpoint to it. And it has to do with auto deletion of devices that are out there. So as you guys know, right, if we take a simple guest network, right, if you are monitoring a guest network, which, sometimes there's reasons for doing that, or if you're just monitoring a fairly flat network, okay, whether it's your home or some other system where people can bring wireless devices in and out, or there may be people coming on the network, right? What happens is Domotz will immediately recognize that device, will try to classify it. Then when the person leaves, it's just sitting there, right? It's sitting there as an offline device and it stays as an offline device until a point where you get so frustrated with how many offline devices you have that you go in and delete them all. I will say there are simple ways for us to go in and delete, right, all offline devices. But I'm curious, the suggestion was, curious your thoughts on this, Giancarlo. Is there a way we could say, in our UI, right, have some sort of feature that says, if it's not an important device and it's been offline for X number of days, delete, right? Is it something?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's it's one of the feature requests that we have for a little bit, and we are getting more and more, followers of this kind of feature. So we will definitely do that. And in the exact same way you described, GB, I want to mention something that to clarify one activity that we did, a big activity that we did during the year, which is something that has been struggling our users for a while. And it was the #1 feature request for 2 or 3 years now, which are basically make us touching one of our basic assumptions behind Domotz. That's why it was huge change for us, even though from a feature perspective, it seems a very small thing. Basically, until 2 months ago, every single device was a different MAC address. So if you had one device with multiple network interfaces, they were showing up as two or three different devices in Domotz. Why? Because the assumption at the beginning of our journey in Domotz was one MAC address, one device. Full stop. We had this feature request for a couple of years at least. A lot of people were asking for a way to aggregate network interfaces in one physical device. And as you can understand, given the assumption, we had to touch every single piece of our infrastructure to make sure that now the device is a collection or more than one network interface. And we have it done. So just a little bit of patience, and we will get this auto delete of non-important device offline done as well.
Yeah, I would say in the world of IoT, right, a lot of systems have wired and wireless connections, especially when you're dealing with tablets. But anymore, PCs, the same thing, right? So you take your Surface, right? I'm using a Surface here. You unplug that from the hardwired network. It now goes to a Wi-Fi NIC, right? Being able to associate those into a single device is simplifying things. So that was a good change. Giancarlo, we've had a couple questions come up on this notion of asset tags, right? IDs. I look at this also as being like serial numbers, right? When it comes to inventory management. I want to point out a couple things here, but then I want you to speak to the UI side of it. Domotz on our backend infrastructure, and we've had this for Giancarlo will tell me at least 3 years, right? Because the pandemic never happened. But we actually have on our API side the ability to create custom fields under every single device. Now, for a lot of you, that doesn't really help you because it's in the APIs and you want to use the UI. But part of having that under there is giving us that scalability, as Giancarlo talked about, such that if we needed to, or we choose to add another field underneath the device properties, that we kind of have that structure to do that. It can be used right now for anything, right? But the notion of asset tags, I think, is a good one. What's your thoughts, Giancarlo?
No, you're absolutely right, GP. No, we have in our backend, so available through the public API, the capability for you guys to add your own custom fields. You can define serial number or tag A, tag B, and tag C, and then specify serial number for every single device across all your infrastructure. Now, the limitation is that it's available only in the public API. Why is that? Because we have several customers that they've built their own UI on top of the Domotz cloud, and they use this kind of inventory information in their own UI. We will make sure to bring this information in our UI as well. So you will be able to tag in the way you want, but even create like whatever custom fields you have in mind. Yeah.
Yep. I like this last question that we just got because Giancarlo, you and I have talked about this. If I'm reading into this correctly, right? It says, would it be helpful to pre-enter MAC addresses into the database, right? Why you and I talked about this, right? The notion of being able to enter a MAC address, right? Because that can often be an asset tag being used by project management or people getting started out in systems. But then once it shows up, having it kind of pre-populate in Domotz with all the properties, right? The proper name and everything. Any thoughts on that?
No, something technically feasible. No, it doesn't affect a huge assumption that we had, like the multiple network interface. So it's something easier to do. Of course, requires some work, but yeah, it makes sense. Somehow we have this concept of importing information into Domotz. You can do that through a CSV file, no, or Excel file through the desktop app. But at the moment, you can only import information on top of something that you have already discovered in Domotz, which starts from the address. Now, you start from the address, and then in this Excel sheet, you want to put your own name, your own tag, and so on, and then import back the Excel.
And Giancarlo, I would point out that from a flow perspective, right? Usability perspective. One of the things that we made some assumptions on is that it's more likely that you're using some sort of documentation system or project management system. In the commercial AV space, you've got Solutions 360, you've got D tools, right, on the integration side, that you may want to bring that information and import it or integrate it into Domotz, right? So some of this is just automatically populated. Those are some of the changes in the ways in which I see that flow, rather than trying to utilize Domotz as the end all be all documentation and whatnot tool.
Yeah.
I want to ask one other question, Giancarlo, that we get a lot of questions about from different groups, and I want to address it, and then we'll finish this. It was something that actually came into my inbox earlier, and it was about the Domotz box, right? And a lot of people see that thing as being kind of long in the tooth, right? Meaning that it's been around for a while. We've been on the B12 version for a long time. A few things I want to say about that. The reason we've been on the B12 version for so long is because it just seems to work. We have made slight modifications on this thing, where we've made the micro USB connector much more robust. Okay. I know it was a surface mounted feature before, but we made it a through hole, which made that thing a lot more robust. So any hardware that's now getting shipped is with that more robust connector. Other than that, from a simplicity perspective, it's just been there and it's been working. Also, in working with our supplier, we know that that thing has a long life still. So we're just happy with it. That being said, okay, the agent, we've got so many different variations of which you can install the agent. Whether you want to do simple Windows install, you can create your own Linux servers, you can create your own virtual machines, you can host an agent out in AWS if you want. You can use NAS drives, and we're going to continue down that philosophy. That also being said, I recognize that ISP speeds are getting faster and faster. We're starting to see 2.5 gig interfaces, not only at modems, but also coming from primarily in the integration space, right? But coming from residential and small business ISPs. So we need to have a faster processor that can start to hit those speeds. We also need to recognize the fact that more systems are using things like SNMP v3, which uses AES or DES for encryption. And so just having more and more devices there, we need more. We've gotten a lot of requests for PoE for that box. We've gotten, of course, a lot of requests for a more robust power connector aside from PoE too. So some of those things we are looking at and starting to address. What we're also trying to do is make sure that it can scale with you guys and grow with you guys. So I think over the next year to 18 months, we're going to have a new device that will meet some of these performance needs and some of these additional needs. But I also want to point out that, if you need a more robust solution, take advantage of a NUC, right? Take advantage of we're doing experiments with things like Zima boards and other like Raspberry Pi 4s and things like that you can easily utilize too. So that was a comment I wanted to make. I mean, Giancarlo, did you have any other thoughts on that before we close this thing out?
No, absolutely. You did right, GB, and that's a very, internally it's a very hot topic for us. We have some recommendations, as you mentioned. We have some recommendation of NUC or other platform where you can install Domotz. Sometimes cheaper, sometimes more expensive than the Domotz box. I mean, the Domotz as an agent is very flexible and you can really install from on a root router, rather than on a NAS drive or on your Windows PC or even on these small appliances.
Yeah.
And I see Enrique is smiling because he's playing a lot with those appliances all the time.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I feel like this town hall was a success. I don't know if everybody just wanted to stay muted or they did the right great job of following the rules, but I think this was great. I loved all the chats that came in. I appreciate all the questions. This was good. Hopefully we can do this again sometime soon. Thank you everybody for joining us. It is being recorded. We'll somehow get this thing posted so that it's out there for everybody as well. Thank you so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. So thank you.
Oh, by the way, I'm going to show up in your room, JP, but since I see some appreciation, no, about the town hall. I'm coming. Yeah, I'm coming. Yeah,
I'm a little worried
to show that. Yeah, I'm coming. There will be a lot of noise here. So I will be mute now.
Okay. What are you doing?
Just about no. I just want to mention that we want to make sure that we do this kind of stuff more often.
Yeah.
So somebody's asking if we do biannually, but actually we probably do monthly or.
Oh yeah, I can see us doing this. Yeah, more often. We want to hear from you guys. There's some initiatives that I have going on in 2023 where I'm out talking to people a lot more and speaking to people. So, and it's really more about listening, right? So I hope that we can do this more often, Giancarlo, to make sure that we're getting.
I really like the audience, everybody there.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you.